It's Monday morning, 9:30 a.m., and an email hits your inbox. You open it up, it's from your manager. You get about 3 sentences in, and you feel your chest just tightening up. What the email contains is your manager's thoughts on the direction that your project that you're leading is going, and they don't align with how you see things going. Now, there isn't a real issue with the fact that they don't necessarily see things the way that you do and they've communicated it to you. It's rather how your brain deals with this. You see, what your brain does is it sees it as a threat. It sees it as a threat to your autonomy. It sees it as a threat to perhaps your judgment. And you end up becoming defensive. It's very easy to do so. We react versus kind of respond, to process the information calmly. And so what happens is you read about 3 to 4 sentences in, and then your chest tightens, and you complete the whole thing, and then without really thinking too much, you start crafting the perfect rebuttal. You think about, okay, this is where they're wrong, this is where they're wrong, this is where they're wrong, and then you write the perfect rebuttal email, and you press send. For the moment, you feel relaxed, huge weight taken off your chest. You go, you know what? I feel good. I feel vindicated. About 10, 15 minutes later, once you've forgotten about it, you're overcome with the sheer sensation of regret. You're like, oh my goodness, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have reacted. But it's too late. The phone rings and it's your manager going, we've got to talk. Now, this happens all the time, despite professionals and leaders just really knowing that it's much better to respond without being emotional to emails rather than react instinctively to things that potentially have emotionally hijacked us and prevent us from thinking clearly. You see, the brain is just so hardwired to go through the world and try to figure out what is a threat to us and what is not a threat to us. And one of the big threats is a sense that our status, our judgment is being threatened. And it's very, very easy to misinterpret messages from others, especially in the email format, as such. You see, one of the biggest problems with email communication is that it's not very information rich. If you contrast it to a face-to-face conversation where you get to speak with someone, you get the nuance of facial expressions, body language, distance, tone. The information, the message that's being conveyed is much richer, and your brain has much more information to process, to really try to understand. But what happens in an email is that it's just really text. And conceptually, we understand that emails generally don't necessarily convey all the information necessarily, but that doesn't prevent us from trying to literally, or figuratively I should say, read between the lines. And it's so easy to misinterpret what the message was. You see, the brain was designed to protect us from predators, but it wasn't designed to protect us from misunderstandings in emails that are interpreted as threats. So the question is, well, how do we prevent this from happening? Well, there's 3 things that I encourage you to do. Number 1 is just simply to be self-aware. Self-aware that you have a tendency to react rather than to respond. And that little bit of self-awareness when it comes to receiving emails may be that linchpin move that prevents you from reacting versus responding and sending out responses that you ultimately regret. That's the first step, just simply self-awareness that this is a thing that we can very easily get emotionally hijacked. The second strategy is to apply what's called the S.T.O.P technique. And what this is essentially a 4-step framework that moves us, or at least buys us a little bit more time, to move us away from reacting to a position of responding. And the S.T.O.P, the 4 letters of S.T.O.P stand for S means really just stop. Stop what you're doing. Stop responding right away. Stop reacting. The T stands for take a breath. Breathe. Maybe take a few more breaths. That kind of calms you down a little bit by engaging your parasympathetic nervous system. Puts your focus away from the message that you just received and onto your breath. Then the O stands for observe. Observe what you're feeling, what your sensation, what you're feeling. Are you feeling like you need to respond right away and to get yourself to feel vindicated, to defend your position, right? Are you observing that you're perhaps reacting rather than, trying to process? And then the last letter, P, is just simply to proceed with intention, right? This is trying to get control back into your brain rather than your nervous system so that you can proceed in a much more calm and well thought out way. So the 4 letters are STOP, or S-T-O-P. Stop what you're doing, take a breath, observe what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and then proceed with intention. And then the last step is simply to get more information or get clarity. One of the drawbacks of emails is that it's just not information dense, as I mentioned before. And one of the biggest problems that causes conflict in email communication is information asymmetry. The other individual has a lot more information than you do in the context of that particular email. And if they're not a great writer, if they're not a great communicator, if they're very short and brief in what they send to you, there isn't really that much to go on. And so if you have that fundamental mental process in your mind that this doesn't have enough information, they probably haven't conveyed enough, and it doesn't tell me enough information to really take a position to decide what to do next, just reach out to them and seek clarity versus to respond to what is literally in the message that was sent to you, right? So just get more information and seek clarity. So the question is, well, how do you get in the reps? How do you get the practice? How do you make this internalized, hardwired? Well, throughout the course of your day, apply the STOP as much as you possibly can. Get comfortable using it. Receiving an email that you weren't expecting isn't the only time throughout the course of your day where you're going to be emotionally hijacked or triggered or want to react versus to strategically respond. Someone could come up to you and say something that irks you and makes you want to react right away. You may observe something that you may not have full information on, but you want to react to it versus respond. These are all situations where you can apply STOP. The more you practice it, the more just pausing and observing and then responding to a position of volition and choice and strategic thinking becomes your go-to. And that will help you when these emails pop up. And the other strategy is just simply to put a Post-it note up on your desk or your work area with the letters STOP. And it's just a visual reminder for you to apply it. Because quite often, when we are in the heat of the moment, when something arrives on our desk or in our plate that we aren't expecting, we're not always going to be able to think clearly. But having a visual cue, just like the letter STOP on a Post-it note, can be the lifeline that we need to prevent us from reacting versus doing what we want to do, which is respond. Good luck.